took 2.5 years to build and beta test what is now the core of what we do as Generation Distinct. If you haven't called on yet, and we're going to talk more about this in a little bit, but what we do is we have these cohorts that start every 3 months virtually, and then also starting to launch up on churches as well, is that we have these cohorts of young leaders 6 months long, and they go through an online virtual cohort through our Launch Your Passion program. And we took 2.5 years to build and beta test that behind the scenes. And then we launched it around the time COVID happened. And it was really cool because it was always meant to be virtual. And so that worked out actually really well for us. But now that we're back together, we get to tell you guys the stories of the past 1.5 years since launching, the young leaders that have come through our program. And one of those young leaders, we decided to bring her all the way from North Carolina so she could share her story with you. She's one of our early adopters in this vision. And so we wanted you guys to get to hear from her. And so all the way from North Carolina, we have the amazing Kiersten Abernathy.
Hi.
Kiersten, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome again.
It's an honor to be here.
Y'all, Kiersten is an incredible young leader. I'm just personally so glad that I had an excuse to get her out here to Chicago. She's staying in our apartment this week, which has been so fun. And if you've been to our apartment, you know that's quite an experience. My husband and I live in a shoebox apartment in the city of Chicago. So by staying in my apartment, it's, hey, Kiersten, you want to come to Chicago and talk at this event and sleep on a air mattress in our living room / kitchen / everything, because that's the only room in our apartment. And she said yes. So I'm so glad that she is here. I want you guys to hear just the amazing young leader that she is. She's an amazing young leader in her own right. But it's an honor that we've also gotten to partner with what God is doing in her life through Generation Distinct. So, Kiersten, share just a little bit about who you are, what your age is, what you're passionate about, where you're at in life, and then we'll dive in.
Yeah. So as she said, I'm from North Carolina. It was quite fun getting here. I'm 22 years old, and I live in a very small town known as Hickory in North Carolina. I'd be shocked if anyone has actually heard of it. But I'm 22. I'm about to go back to college to get my master's degree in social work. I'm passionate about worship, and I love Jesus, and I love people.
I'm so excited for the trajectory of this young woman's life. Yeah, she's incredible. Okay, so Kiersten, let's start at the beginning of this journey. Just to give you guys some context on where she's come in Generation Distinct, Kiersten was a part of our August cohort. So we have cohorts that start, as I said, virtually every 3 months. We have another one starting in just a couple of weeks here on May 2nd. But Kiersten was in our August cohort, so she finished 6 months later. And then actually, she made the decision that she loved her experience so much, she wanted to give back to this organization as well. And so now she's volunteering. She's a cohort facilitator for our February cohort that started in February. So now she's investing in other young leaders who are also going through this experience. And when you hear from her, you're going to realize, wow, I want her to invest in my child because she's amazing. Okay, so Kiersten, let's rewind. It's last summer, and you come across Generation Distinct. How do you find out about us? How did that process all begin?
So I was following you, Hannah, on Instagram and Facebook.
When we were talking, hold on. When we were talking about this earlier, she was like, yeah, I'll tell them how I followed you. And I was like, yeah, for this card, you might need to explain that's on social media. Yeah. So that explanation was for you guys, just so you know.
But yes, I'd been following you on social media for quite a while. And I was actually following Generation Distinct Instagram as well, but I never actually knew what it was. I'm just like, oh, that's cool. But I never actually knew what Generation Distinct was until I had sent you a message on Facebook about something totally unrelated. Again, didn't know what Generation Distinct was. And we just began talking, and I remember you asked me to hop on a Zoom call and hear my heart, and I'm like, okay, it's a little strange, but sure. It's in the middle of the pandemic. I've got nothing else better to do, so let's do it. You seem amazing. So we hopped on that call, and you just began just telling me about this thing coming up in a couple months, known as a cohort. And you just began to tell me about Generation Distinct, and it sounded incredible. And that was how I started knowing anything about Generation Distinct.
I love that. That's so great. And so you were in a season, Kiersten, again, it was this back in the summer, and now looking back, maybe you didn't even realize in the moment, but if you go back and you think about where you were at that moment, what were some of the things that you were searching for, that maybe you were missing, that you were longing for, that again, maybe you didn't know it at the time, but now looking back, you could realize, man, I was really looking for that in that season.
I was desperate for community. For sure, that's probably the first thing. I'd been navigating this thing called adult life, brand new to it, and I definitely needed guidance. I was looking for answers about what I was called to, what I was passionate about, and just in a season where I thought I knew what that looked like, and everything in my life just proved otherwise. And I was kind of starting over. As I said, I was early 20s at that time, still am. And so I was desperately looking for community and someone who would mentor me and give me guidance, and just other people my age who were passionate about world change and passionate about just doing things in our generation.
It's so relevant to how so many of us have felt in our lives, right? I mean, you mentioned earlier, Michael, to think back, to who do you know in their 18 to 30-year-old years right now. Nicole, you mentioned remembering to be that age. And that is the season of life, right? We're trying to figure out, I'm 27, so I'm still in this age range as well, that we're trying to figure out, man, what are we called to do? What is life? How do we navigate all this? I have big questions, but I also know I want to change the world, so how do I do all of this? Well, you were in that point. And then you started Generation Distinct. You took me up on my offer, and you said, I'll join it. We'll see. And again, that was our second official cohort.
Yeah.
So you really took a risk. And then what happened? Like, you joined the cohort. Give us a little bit of the behind-the-scenes look. Tell them, what is it actually like to be in a Generation Distinct cohort?
So I signed up, and then I get this email that there's going to be this huge cohort Zoom call with everyone that's a part of this program. And I'm like, okay, I have no idea what I've actually signed up for. And so the process really looked like the first night, getting on that Zoom call and seeing all these faces that were my age around the world. I'm like, what? There are people out there that are like really cool and young and want to do cool things with their life. I'm not the only one. This is great. And from there, just going through a lot of the amazing content, the weekly content, having my eyes completely open to just so many different issues that happen, and things that I knew were happening around the world, but I didn't think they were like happening around me. I thought it was in a foreign country, or just I had just nowhere near me. And so the whole process just looked like getting to do life with community once a month on our cohort Zoom calls, and just such a refreshing time every Monday, first Monday of the month, and just going through content and discovering who God has made me to be and what I'm passionate about in the 6-month program.
Amazing. Those times are so rich. Right now, Michael and Aaron and myself and our cohort facilitators, our staff is still really committed to being a part of that as we continue to build our culture. And so we'll, no matter where we're at, speaking at conferences or whatever, we'll tune into our cohort calls that happen. Some of the cohorts meet on Monday nights, some meet on Tuesday nights. And every single time, Aaron and I will close the computer after one of these cohort calls, and they're an hour and a half long, and we get to hear from these young leaders as they're discovering these dreams that God has given them, as they're getting new visions, as they're realizing that it's not actually a bad thing that they start to care about wrong things being made right in the world, that it's not actually a bad thing for them to want to use their life to change the world. It's actually part of God's plan for who they are, and they're dreaming and their eyes are lighting up, and we're looking at each other like, oh my goodness, the dreams that are just being whispered for the first time here could actually change the world. What would happen if these actually had a strategy and a plan? And then we know we're excited because we actually end up building a plan. We end up building a strategy with them. That's exactly what happens in one of our Generation Distinct cohorts, is over 6 months, they're not just being educated on injustice, and they are. They don't just go through their own story and discover what are the common themes in my story, what are the common narratives, what are the moments that have really shifted my life, what has shaped me, who am I actually, and they do experience that. But then they also get to be trained on their passion. So we have 5 tracks that we've developed with a collaboration of over 50 leaders from around the world to help us build these tracks. They're experts, and they can choose from a visionary track, an evangelism track, a mentorship track, an activist track, or a mentorship track. And in those tracks, every single week, there's an interview with an expert in that area, and they're setting goals, they're taking action, and these are where they really start getting that training. And they have a workbook that you can see over there at the end of the night if you'd like to go check it out. And those workbooks were designed by our amazing creative team. Those are all built by our amazing team, and we create them. And then they're setting goals, and that's where they really are trained on how to create their SMART goals. And so every young leader, again, that's their world change strategy they walk away with. And then you walked away with setting goals. Every young leader sets 3-month, 6-month, 1-year, and 3-year goals. And we train them how to create SMART goals. And this is their plan to now take everything they experienced over the last 6 months and actually have a strategy to go out and launch it and change the world. So share a little bit. You were in our visionary track.
Yes.
Our visionary track is really fun. It's our arts and communication and creativity track. And so this is for like singer-songwriters. This is for poets. This is for people who want to be speakers, communicators, a lot of different just creative outlets, writers, authors. And so this is a really fun one. You chose the visionary track. You are such an amazing, anointed creative. Share about some of the goals that you set coming out of the cohort.
So my first goal was to study 5 different creatives that I looked up to. As someone who just loves to sing and just everything creative, I can just have a lot of ideas but no idea what to do with them. So my first goal was to study creatives, and my second goal was to begin to build community around creativity. And from that, I actually launched my podcast in the middle of the 6 months. So I was able to make goals to have discipline around that. And my next goal was to share at least 2 projects in a year, whether that be singer-songwriting projects. And again, my podcast kind of started with that goal as well. And then my 3-year goal was to, again, build community around my podcast that I had started, and just really steward the platform that I built around my podcast.
You guys, and this is so cool. Yeah, you can give an applause. Her podcast has only been launched for about 2 months, and I asked her what her numbers were. And first of all, I love this. I texted her this week, and she said, I don't know, I haven't looked. Which, first of all, I just love that about the next generation. They really don't care about how many. It's not really about that. They just care about saying yes to what Jesus has asked them to do. But she has had nearly 500 plays on her podcast in about 2 months. So can we just give her a round of applause? Yeah, so cool. So cool. I'm so proud of her. Her podcast is called Table for Two, T-O-O, saying she wants everyone to feel like they have a place around the table, and that they're, you share it.
Yeah,
share it. You're
totally.
the expert.
So it's called Table for Two, and the heart behind it is just that everyone has a seat at God's table. And so no matter what your 2 is, which is basically anything that you feel disqualifies you from being used by God and being able to make a difference, there's room for that at the table. And not only is there room for it, but God can use it and do big things with it when you just place it in his hands.
I mean, come on. That's launched into the world, and it makes our world such a better place. Kiersten, I'm so grateful for you. Kiersten's now, as I mentioned before, a cohort facilitator. So not only is she launching all of what she's doing, but she's now investing. So every cohort has individual cohort facilitators, people who are there to jump on individual calls, people who are there to pastor them through this experience, invest in them, love on them. But now Kiersten is doing that for our February cohort. So she's the one investing in people, jumping on individual calls, sharing her time with amazing young leaders from all over the world. And Kiersten, we talked about this. A lot of these people in the room watching online, these are the people that help make it happen. So anything that you want to say to these incredible people about why you're so grateful that they invested in this?
Yeah, I'm extremely grateful because it's because of investors that I was even able to be a part of the 6-month program. I was scholarship in, so I probably wouldn't be doing any of this without investors who just decided to invest in a leader. And what I think is so cool is that when you make that decision, you don't know who you're investing in. You know that you're investing in someone, but I think it's really cool as someone who has gone through the program to know that when you say yes and when you decide to partner with Generation Distinct, you could be investing in the next person who will begin to just open the door for change and just making a difference in the world. Or you could be investing in the young woman or young man who may start a youth group or a Bible study. Whatever that looks like, all of it is important, and you could be investing in the next world changer in a million different ways. So I just feel like if you feel a tug on your heart or anything at all, or you're just like, this sounds really cool and I want to give to that, I'm just one example of many, and it doesn't start or stop with the leader that you invest in. It keeps going, and others are impacted because of your yes in so many different ways.
I mean, can we just thank Kiersten? Yeah. Thank you so much.